What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode on the Falcon YouTube channel. Hope you're all doing well. Joined with me is a very special guest that we're a pleasure to have on, Pierce, who is the GM of TradingView. So I'm super excited to get into this podcast and for you to get an insight behind the scenes of TradingView, which you all love and use. Pierce, what's going on? Thanks for jumping on.
Oh, thanks for having me, dude.
No, you're very welcome. Can see the got a lovely backdrop. You're just in the Shard at the moment, right?
Yeah, we recently opened up our global headquarters here in London, and the Shard is a great home for TradingView, a great match of product with the beautiful space and obviously some of the most historic views in all of the UK. So feels good. The team's definitely grown here, and we're really excited to have a home base. We've had offices all over historically, and we've always had a small presence here, but TradingView's now at a size where we feel it's a good time to kind of bulk up our presence in the UK.
100%. I mean, you've grown. I remember even just myself from, as a user of TradingView, I would look into stats, look into how many countries you're in, users. I remember there was one point, I think it was like 9 million, 14 million. And then before you know, it was like 30 million plus users. Is that right? Am I saying that number right?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I look at the metrics every day, and I'll tell you, it's still pretty shocking. We're hovering right around, I believe it's about 29 million visitors to the site on a monthly basis, and that's up more than 140% year over year. So just in the last 18 months or so, probably pre-pandemic to now. We've more than 200% our growth, and it's really only accelerating. I mean, we thought there would be some of a slowdown, and obviously the summer months are a bit slow in general. We may saw a little bit more of a flattening of growth, but we definitely we never saw a kind of slowdown overall. And now that it's September, we definitely have kind of a return to markets in general. So people are back, and the metrics are kind of reflecting that, if you will.
Oh, well, I can only imagine business end of the year, naturally in the financial markets, this next quarter is going to be super exciting. Before we get into anything else, Pierce, just for the viewers that have never heard of you before,
sure.
Would you like to give us just a quick kind of background on what you do at TradingView, things you've been involved with, and your experience?
Yeah, definitely. For people who are not familiar, basically my background is a little unique in the sense that I didn't start in financial technology or fintech as it's called today, because at the time there was actually no career path that would put you on a trajectory to actually work in a fintech or a financial services company that's more startup oriented rather than traditional finance or something like that. So I actually grew up in California, born and raised in kind of a rural part of the country. And moved down to the Bay Area to go to college and study university. I actually studied politics, so no relation whatsoever. Moved on to being a journalist at Thomson Reuters, and then a researcher for the Breaking Views team, which is the financial column for Thomson Reuters. So basically doing financial analysis, deep dive into company research, as well as kind of the guts of what makes a company work or not work. Had the pleasure of writing some really fabulous pieces on kind of success stories and failures in finance. And, it was an amazing kind of way to kind of get my way into the financial world without actually having a traditional background in finance. So I met a ton of folks in the hedge fund world, the banking world, asset management world, et cetera. And that actually gave me the network I needed to, go out and start something, kind of from scratch. And so I joined a company called StockTwits, which at the time was pretty well established as kind of the Twitter for traders. And that was back in 2012. And I was the first New York employee. So my job was to basically build up the North America presence, but also the New York office. From that day forward, we grew to be about 50 people in total in New York. And it's still a very profitable, large company as well. But yeah, it was a great way to kind of start from zero and really build something from scratch. Basically, no kind of guardrails, no existing business model. And so my job was to basically build a business model, more or less learn everything from scratch, and then make something that could actually scale to be a sizable fintech. So that all kind of led me to TradingView. I left StockTwits back in 2018 and joined TradingView in early 2019.
Nice. So it's been, yeah, sometimes it's interesting from not having any prior experience. And if you have the skill set, if you have the mindset, given a different perspective, I found sometimes you ask different questions than maybe someone who's already involved in the industry, and you're able to look at it from a completely different perspective, which it looks like you've just done. So that's phenomenal. How have you, I guess it's flown by since you joined TradingView.
Yeah, well, I mean, and to your point, I mean, I actually really like the idea of building people that are orthogonal to each other, basically teams that can complement each other with completely different skill sets. And I think monoculture in a lot of ways, in terms of startup culture, is kind of a death knell, because it's all, you know, yes men talking to each other, saying the exact same thing. And you know, what's really going to be substantial in changing the industry if you're ultimately all just agreeing on the same page with the, you know, same kind of old status quo. So yeah, I mean, people we hire here are, you know, passionate about what they do, but oftentimes they may not fit into traditional molds, which is kind of a great opportunity. Yeah, I mean, to your original question, I mean, it definitely has flown by. I mean, it's amazing to think that it's nearly 3 years now, and yeah, I mean, timing is everything as well, of course. I mean, you know, I had no idea that crypto was going to be what crypto was, which is a big part of what TradingView is today. And I had no idea that, you know, we would go through a global pandemic, and so we'd have to kind of figure that out. But funny enough, TradingView is actually kind of globally distributed from the get-go. So we have offices all around the world. We have, you know, 25 regional offices, where basically we have managers who manage, say, our team in Hong Kong, or you know, South Africa, or Brazil, or Australia. And so we were kind of set up to kind of do well, or do, you know, kind of better than maybe other companies would during you know, kind of unforeseen circumstances, like you know, massive, you know, virus that spread around the country or spread around the world. And so as a result, we've fared things quite well, and have managed to grow the team during the pandemic, when I know a lot of fintechs or other companies in the space have, you know, otherwise either flatlined their growth, or ultimately had to let go a lot of people, which is the unfortunate reality of you know, kind of a totally different way of kind of seeing markets.
Well, I guess from that perspective, it's made you even more robust. I mean, if you can thrive rather than survive, you can thrive in those conditions when other ones are going down. And clearly, is that just down to your infrastructure, how you've done things maybe outside the box? What would you say is the key thing for that from other companies that have kind of crumbled in this environment?
I think for sure, durability is insanely important. And one thing that's quite different from the work we do at TradingView versus the work of other companies, a lot of venture-backed startups are extremely cash heavy, where they, you know, spend a lot of money on day-to-day business. We since the actual inception of TradingView, and this is kind of the ethos of the founders, the CTO and CEO, who are still, you know, with us today, and obviously managing the business from kind of a global scale. They have always been, you know, very sensitive of each dollar spent, and ultimately, you know, how we deploy our money. And so as a result, you know, some companies that have been burning cash for years, we've been, you know, moving in the opposite direction, where, you know, we're very much a SaaS product, and as a result, you know, we can scale our business faster than we can scaling our you know, kind of human capital. So obviously our margins are quite beneficial as a result. And so it set us up to basically weather any storm possible, right? Because we, you know, as soon as a pandemic hits, not only are we still making money, but on top of that, you know, we can actually take, you know, if we were to take a hit on the revenue side of things, we'd be able to actually, you know, deal with that, because we have a margin that actually allows us to do so. Whereas a lot of other fintechs, especially venture-backed ones, will take a ton of capital, and then when a global pandemic hits, you know, they're ultimately making no money and burning an insane amount of money because of their, you know, operating structures. And so we've very much been, you know, built from day one in that regard.
I love that, and everything about it, which is long-term thinking. That's literally exactly what we do in our ecosystem of what we've built. always taking the long-term approach over any kind of quick win, and cash flow is king, as they say, right? So actually understanding how that works. And I had almost an inkling that's what TradingView was doing, because how else have you thrived in those conditions? And you've, even with the logo, right, I can see the rebranding and just the innovation. It's really good to see that. Before I ask you or get into the kind of the future of TradingView, of what you can kind of disclose and discuss, what I've noticed with TradingView in terms of like community, you've been really, really big on building communities, the power of community. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because we resonate on a lot of levels on that. I'd be curious to see, how have you managed to cultivate that at scale, which I find incredible, because it's a we have a community as well, but it's much more niche and bespoke and tailored, versus when you're building something at scale, it's monstrous, right? So how have you managed that?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the, I guess the secret sauce, if you will, in a lot of, I think, successful companies in general, is being able to build really massive, communities around a product, rather than, have the product speak for itself. And in a lot of cases, a product may be fantastic, but what you really need is champions who believe in it, down to their core. And I think my understanding in terms of talking to the founders for a long time is that they always have the most vigilance towards the individual, and ultimately trying to figure out exactly what the individual trader really needs. I think a lot of people believe that they have a sense of what's right for the customer, whereas these guys, are open enough to basically say, we have no idea, let's listen to them. And I think that that's a huge differentiator, because a lot of products will basically be built by people who worked at hedge funds or worked at a bank, and they, would say, I know how it's done. I've seen it before. And then they go and build a product that actually the community doesn't want. And in a lot of cases, you're building for the wrong type of person. And so they are, kind of ear to the ground, if you will, always listening to the customer. And as a result, we build products that are insanely valuable to the individual. And these individuals then become our champions, because they realize that they're the ones that can actually influence what we do as a company. And so in that regard, it's created an insanely vibrant ecosystem around TradingView, as well as on TradingView proper. And really, the ecosystem around us are champions and ambassadors that are on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook or what have you, sharing charts or talking about TradingView, and that's great. But then on TradingView itself, we also have, a community that's basically using our software not just to journal and keep tabs on their own performance, but to explain to others how they've done it historically, how they've made it, and ultimately how they are giving back by kind of sharing their ideas, or at least getting feedback from the community. And ultimately that kind of ecosystem is a virtuous cycle. The more people that actually contribute, the more value there is there, the better the community gets. And you can build communities for anything. I mean, network effects are, ubiquitous throughout all the most famous tech companies in the industry today. Ours just happens to be specifically talking about, finance and investing. And so, if you think about it, like a Facebook, it has insane network effects, but the end goal of Facebook is to monetize you more from an advertising perspective. Of course, yeah. Where the end goal of TradingView is to actually make you a more successful investor. And I think that that's like a big differentiator in terms of, our global thinking, because everything we do ultimately has to channel back into making people more successful.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's very clear that the vision of what it is, as you mentioned, way too many companies are always thinking about what they think the customer wants or the consumer wants, versus actually just listening. And you would think that's common sense, right? You would think that it's common, but maybe not so much. And then they build elaborate products that don't actually work. That was actually a question for you. So with my background starting very, very early, 2008, right? So right in the financial crash, which was a super fascinating time. The only softwares that were available then were ShareScope, because I started in stocks. I don't know if you remember ShareScope, and then eSignal, right? So eSignal in there as well. And, really great things. But for me, feeling really overwhelmed, and the overall consensus of those wider communities was that it's too difficult, and to spend more time in software versus just jumping on and feeling in a state of flow. And as a trader, you mentally have to be prepared. So the last thing you want is overcomplication of either journaling your positions or analyzing your positions. You want that to be as smooth as possible. So my transition over to finding TradingView was like, honestly, incredible. The simplicity, just everything about it. It was really, really good. It's been a big change to see TradingView kind of dominate that from everything that's out there. It just kind of came in with this simplistic approach. I was talking to in my conversation with Romain, very, very simple features that TradingView clearly listened to all the time with that ear to the ground approach of just typing in a currency pair and it not moving on to the next one before you actually enter another one. Like these simple little things. And I think that is what is going to keep TradingView just constantly innovating and ahead of the curve. So we thank you for that for my day-to-day operation. I've got TradingView on the left of my screen as well.
It's just watching markets as we talk. No, I mean, I agree with you 100%. There is a total barbell in the industry of extremely complicated do everything products versus extremely simple, not very useful or helpful products. And I think that what we have to do as a company, and I think what the engineering team here and the product team really care about is making that full transition of a life cycle. Because not everybody is starting at the same kind of speed or same kind of sophistication. And if you don't give them kind of the rails, if you will, to build from, one part of the product all the way through to the most advanced part of the product, you're ultimately catering to a very small spectrum of this reality, which is everybody starting at a different point in their investing career or, trading career or, even doing this simply on the side as a way to make, kind of a long-term goal for yourself. And so we really aim to be extremely simple and intuitive so that you can get started, the couple basics that'll get you to a place where you're more educated. You can at least talk about markets. And then on the other side of that, there's people that are on TradingView, 15 hours a day. I don't know how many markets you're trading, but broadly speaking, for me in North America, the U.S. equity markets are open. TradingView is on. I'm watching things because it's amazing to be able to track global markets in real time. And so our most sophisticated customers are literally using this as their core utility that they're using every day to do their work. So we really don't think of any difference of customer base. We just have to kind of build for each of those segments along the way.
Yeah, love that. And even the application on the phone, I find that even so handy because a lot of the times before this kind of pandemic, I was traveling a lot. And again, deep work, deep analysis, laptop, desktop. But once you've done that, you have a very, very good idea of entry points that you want to get involved in certain asset classes. Just having a non-overcomplicated app, 2 seconds, the amount of times that has actually helped me get into a position. I mean, the app within itself has just been phenomenal. So like those two together, I see that as such a big asset, which is why I always encourage people that are, if they're thinking about, right, you get the basics. Because what I love about TradingView is that you can get involved for free. You can get set up, as you said. And then it's a very, very small investment of your trading career. And I like to think about it from a mindset point of view. The mentality must be, if you aspire to be a 6-figure, 7-figure trader, 8-figure trader, it's a drop in the ocean and it's such a necessity. And as a part of that, with those extra features, it's why we always encourage people to do that, right? Get involved and make it easier. Have your watch list, these extra features that they are a must. They really, really are. And my kind of next question for you, Pierce, which is as much as you can share as well. When you think about the future of TradingView, as you mentioned, you're traveling back and forth, you're always innovating. You're just shy of 30 million users, right? Which is just phenomenal achievement. Where would you say the future of TradingView is in terms of other countries? I actually watched a podcast that you was on, and you were speaking about even in like the kind of the Chinese market, as that kind of culture changes, like gambling culture almost. I'll be really curious. Like, is there any kind of plans with that as to how you expand further?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think in terms of your initial thought around, the drop in the bucket or the drop in the ocean, I mean, we think the exact same in terms of, how much does it cost to, buy a pair of tennis shoes? And if you're going to be a
Exactly.
marathoner, you better buy those tennis shoes, right?
There you go.
So if you don't have the tools, how can you beat the system? So, but broadly speaking, in terms of where we're headed and ultimately where we see the next couple of years, I mean, 30 million is a great starting point, but globally speaking, there's something between 500 million to 700 million trading accounts, just depending on the cycles of financial markets. So we think all of those people can actually gather value from TradingView.
100%.
There's no doubt that we can provide a small amount of value, even if a customer never pays us $1. And that's because the majority of the product is free, and folks that are taking this more lightly, they don't maybe need an advanced subscription, and that's totally fine, right? Like I think that a lot of folks come to us just to check financial markets and build a watch list. And like you said, the mobile app, I literally every day I just wake up and check what's going on, and that's all free. There's nothing, no cost to that. So so I think we can service a lot of folks, with the simplest of the simple. And then for the other end of the spectrum are ultimately the kind of more sophisticated guys that really want to dive in, guys and gals, of course. We definitely think we can build more, and really address as many markets as possible. I mean, we have close to 60 exchanges on the equity side of things integrated to TradingView. We have global futures data and commodities data. We're pulling in a lot more FX data for you and the a lot of the folks that trade FX in most of Europe. And we're also very kind of versed in the cryptocurrency space, and we have a ton of data on that as well. And we're working on kind of level 2 data for that right now, which is an interesting nuance, is kind of going deeper into the crypto space. But broadly speaking, I think we're really not doing much different, I guess, as we are kind of refining an uncut product. It's kind of like a diamond in the rough, and I think that really what you got to do is polish the edges and get it really kind of a refined experience, so that again, for a customer that's starting, putting their first dollar into a brokerage account. In the US, we always say Robinhood, right? It's like the most ubiquitous, but here you have like free trade and a couple of the other apps that I mean, the entry point is literally $1. And so I think that we have to think strategically about that type of customer versus somebody who's managing $1 million book or something like that. And basically we really need to just pull them along the spectrum, and ultimately, not force them to do things they don't need to, but ultimately, educate them and create key decision points where, they can say to themselves, all right, I'm doing this well, I need to prove on this, I need to help with this, and asking those questions to the community, or ultimately looking in, kind of more in-depth research that we're going to have, as well as like educational tools that we'll have on top of the platform, as well as kind of a great way that we can kind of at least hold their hand in the process of becoming an investor. And I think that if we did nothing more than that over the next couple of years, and being able to kind of, steer them in the right direction, and ultimately provide, again, that utility function of being, the daily check on markets, that to me is a great mission. And everything else we do on top of that, I mean, we got a lot of other stuff cooking as well, but but of course, some stuff we can't talk about too much. So, but definitely look out for some announcements coming up in a few weeks. It'll be very important.
100%. And I think that's huge. The fact that you guys are giving people that opportunity to be able to use that, because at each stage in their journey, if I look at it from a trading perspective, which is why I think TradingView has done this very well. When I originally started, it was very much £3,000 to £5,000 course. You if you have that money, great. If you don't, some people have not got access to that type of capital. So then it's only people that have got that. Until you get into it, you might realize it's not for you. You don't like it, but you're already a £5,000 investment. Then when it goes to software, £100, £200 per month, you still don't know. You might just be curious. So the fact that you offer the free and then very, very minimal investment to be able to scale up along the way on your journey, I think it gives everybody an opportunity, everybody a chance, a fighting chance to actually even just explore the idea as to, could I do this? Could I see myself, trying out the features, seeing what it's like, getting involved in the communities that you've built, your authors. There is so much there that clearly cares about the individual. And I absolutely love that. And I can see that as a trader, like that sticks out to me massively. It really, really does.
That's great.
Circling back to what you mentioned about the crypto side of things, I noticed that you guys focused on that a lot, especially at the right time. You really started to pull more data. And I know you said you're working on kind of that level 2 side of things. How has that kind of been for you from the back end? Have you found an overwhelming more amount of people wanting that crypto data, I take it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, in terms of the trajectory of the crypto market, I mean, there's a certain element of being good, and there's a certain element of being lucky. And I think that for a market like crypto, there was no way that it could be purely skill based, right? There's a chance that the whole market was going to collapse, or the whole market is going to become trillions of dollars, right? And I think, but these guys were building in the data integrations back when nobody really knew for sure. It seemed like an interesting asset class. There was a lot of people involved on social media and blah blah blah, and so they took the stab at it back in 2015. They pulled in the first data feed for a Bitcoin chart from one of the early exchanges. In fact, it was an exchange that previously existed and actually went out of business, in kind of the initial boom and bust cycles that were going through crypto. So, I mean, I think they were definitely prepared for what could be a potentially huge market. And, fast forward to today, I mean, the total asset class is rivaling, many of the largest tech companies of the world. If you compare them to, kind of just on a market cap basis, but I mean, in terms of, an addressable needs basis, there's a lot of these new currencies, et cetera, that are set up specifically for, I guess, addressing a market of untapped, kind of unbanked or untapped people that actually could really benefit from having kind of a digital asset in their portfolio. So on the back end, it's been definitely a slog, because I think that, one of the things in an emerging market is that there's not a ton of transparency. There's not a ton of data integrity. And broadly speaking, I think, TradingView's role in a lot of this is to, be, shining the light, if you will, into markets that are otherwise pretty opaque. So we've definitely done our best to add a lot of markets and, really just give people a sense of, what is this? How does it trade? What does the volume profile look like? Can I apply any of my, traditional studies on top of this new asset class? Does anything translate over? Are there any correlations between assets? These are all the questions that I think most people should, be asking before just, kind of plunging into some new crypto project that launches on the internet.
Of course.
So I think that was really their initial intention, was to just shine light on it. And, now we have a pretty big spectrum of what you would consider professional crypto traders. And for the most part, they do all use TradingView. They really were born in, kind of the, like the chaos that was, the 2017 kind of ICO boom and bust. And, a lot of people were completely wiped out, and others, basically made their first stab at being professional traders by, being part of that market and timing it right. And ultimately, fast forward to today, I mean, we have on the platform, we have, multi-million-dollar traders that are, on the platform every day, just day in, day out, not only just trading, but also sharing their ideas back with the community, which is really incredible. I mean, I think a lot of people categorize TradingView as being a retail platform. And, I've been around the space long enough to, meet a lot of folks that, are very much, considered institutional, even though they are just, big single name accounts. So they're not like bank traders. They're not like a Deutsche Börse or something like that. I mean, they are individuals, but they're trading at a hedge fund level, and they use TradingView as their core system. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the market has definitely evolved a lot, even in 3 years' time. And, TradingView's kind of been along the way for the entirety of it. But we're definitely not done. I think we see that there are obvious places where we can improve on creating more transparency for sure. And what I was saying about the level 2 stuff, one of the first partnerships we actually just launched, and I can talk about this one because we finally got it out the door. But so Glassnode is a company that basically does a lot of in-depth blockchain analytics. So they're looking at the actual transaction level on any given block, on any given chain, and then basically exposing that to end customers so that they can actually consume that. And what's really interesting about generally blockchains and just kind of at a high level is that they are all public. So all this transaction data is actually publicly available. But from the average customer standpoint, like I'm never going to know even how to read that. Like I can't just look into a given transaction layer and say, oh yeah, 7,000 transactions ran on this block and total notional value of XYZ. So Glassnode and other companies like Glassnode are specialists in basically translating that kind of block level data up to high level dashboards for consumers. And so we saw that early and said, listen, I mean, let's see if we can work with them on a way where it's beneficial for both parties. One is to get more exposure. The other is to just consolidate all that information in one place. And I mean, they've been super helpful and open in allowing us to do that. We have some plans for other partners as well, and I think that broadly speaking, the idea is we just want more data in one place, and how can we compare that to other data sets and other asset classes? But Glassnode's great, and it's a good starting point for that level 2 data.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think it's incredibly important in a market that's still really in its infant stages, and you can see the amount of excitement. What we're kind of focusing on now, especially in the crypto side of things, the next 2-3 years is going to be very, very interesting. As you've mentioned about a lot of these kind of pump and random internet project coins is probably not the way, but doing research, especially guys coming to this channel for the first time, it's very, very enticing to jump into the crypto space. And as you mentioned earlier about people getting lucky, I know many of those people. We actually had this in, you mentioned about 2017. This was quite similar in 2014 and 15 in foreign exchange. There were runs on dollar bull runs in which people would literally get involved, not really know what they're doing, and make a lot of money. They would finish on 150% in a year. And I know those because they're my students. A year later, they don't know what they're doing because they hadn't actually built the skill in the first place. They were kind of blindly following and making money. Same thing happened in cryptocurrency. As you know, that we know the stats with lotto winners. If you've not built the framework and the mindset, you'll give it all back anyway. And I think what you guys have done with cultivating community, finding the right people to absorb that knowledge of, if you happen to be in that situation where you did catch a couple of runs and you've made money, well, it's important you learn how to maintain that and actually make it work and learn. So I think you guys have done that incredibly well. From your perspective, Pierce, is something cryptos, NFT, something you find quite interesting?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I've definitely dabbled, just out of curiosity, I think more than anything. Never have I exposed myself to the degree that I, can't sleep at night. I think that that's ultimately the most important part of all this. But, I mean, it's really interesting because I think a lot of my friends and kind of colleagues, and not colleagues at TradingView, but broadly speaking, just in the industry and fintech have really dove, head first into this space. And, yeah, I mean, some have really done it well. And I think what's really interesting to see is that a lot of people who were traditional traders, people that are literally on desks trading FX, or trading, equities or what have you, have dove, head first into this space because it is a very inefficient market in a sense. And so there's a lot of ARPs there. There's a lot of opportunities to capitalize on the space. I think, in terms of trading the cryptocurrencies, et cetera, I mean, I definitely am an investor in some of the longer term ones just because, I have no idea. And broadly speaking, I was early in 2016, 2017. So I'm just kind of, fingers crossed, I'll make a retirement fund on the back end of it. Because ultimately it was, at my previous company, we threw a conference and we had Fred Wilson speak, and Fred Wilson is the founder of Union Square Ventures. He actually had just made their first investment in Coinbase back in the day, and he saw it pretty much as a asymmetric trade. I mean, the downside was whatever his check was, and the upside was essentially, as far as he could model it, it seemed more or less infinite. And I think in terms of my philosophy on a lot of markets, you can only really bet what you can afford to lose. And if the upside is obviously you know, infinite. I mean, it's kind of like you might as well make the bet. You know, even if the bet is, you know, 2 to 3x, well, you can potentially lose. There's potential that you should, you know, push for that as well. And so broadly speaking, that's my kind of thinking on, you know, being an investor in the space. But, you know, I mean, as a result, I've obviously missed so many projects because, you know, in a lot of cases, people will come to myself or to TradingView as a company and say, hey, we want you guys involved. But I mean, we're so known in the space. If we get involved in a project, it can often kind of like distort things, right?
Exactly.
So we very have to like be hands off and kind of realize that, you know, there's no way we can dabble in that space because it just slippery slope, and I don't think that, you know, I mean, we have much bigger things to worry about than that. So
yeah, you have to stay aligned on the vision, which you've always done. But yeah, no, I can, my instincts and intuition told me that was probably the case of people wanting to do that, but that could distort that. I completely agree. I think the way that space is changing right now is far more than what most people at the surface. A lot of people, they just buy crypto and that's it. But there's more. There's staking, there's pools, BlockFi. There's so many other projects that are being built on these systems. ADA, for example, is one of my biggest holdings. And on that particular blockchain of Cardano, it's just fascinating to see all the things that are happening right now over these next years. But guys, be safe out there. Don't just be jumping into any old thing. But it's really interesting because from what I used to have, I would have like foreign exchange, I'd have different asset classes, and then I would have certain equities, and then I would have my cryptocurrency. To be able to go on TradingView and kind of have watch lists of essentially my portfolio, right? Having that, you can have your old-fashioned spreadsheets, but there's just something visually pleasing about being able to go on there and go, right, this is my crypto portfolio, this is this, and I can go on my app and I can basically know in a very, very high degree where I'm about. You know, if I see something, so I've got a good inkling, and that keeps me sharp. It keeps me, rather than going through, I'd have to go through all these different platforms to figure out, log into this, log into that. I can just have a top-down overview as to this is where I'm at, and then I can make better informed decisions. I'm really curious, and you probably can't answer this question, but more and more features that are coming out. I'm just more so fascinated and excited for where will TradingView be in the next kind of couple of years. I'm sure it's going to be 40 million, 50 million, who knows how many. Is there anything that you can share that's kind of coming in the future to kind of to wrap things up as to what you would tell people that are kind of coming into the space, jumping onto the platform, considering your other packages that you've got?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, I wish I could disclose it all, but the reality is people have to wait. And yeah, I mean, it's like Christmas morning every time we launch a new product. People go nuts. So it's always good to see that that kind of feedback loop be so instant. You know, as soon as something goes out the door, people go crazy for it. I would say in terms of near term, probably I'm most excited about the updates that we're about to drop for mobile, as well as we're actually rolling out a desktop product as well. This is so crazy. I mean, we're basically going full circle. But we, you know, back in the 90s, right, you only had desktop software like an e-signal, right?
I remember.
And then here we go to the, you know, financial web. TradingView essentially was the first, you know, high performance financial web product. And, you know, now we have mobile products, we have alert products, we have, you know, webhooks and all this stuff. And now here we go back all the way to the beginning, and we're launching kind of a new desktop product, and it's in a beta right now, and people can actually check out the beta. It's readily available, but we'll be launching the alpha soon, and it's going to be pretty interesting. I mean, basically imagine everything you want, you know, on web, but you know, more or less instantaneous. I mean, TradingView is fast, but imagine how much more fast if all those, you know, components are loaded locally. All you really need is that data feed connection. And so really that's what it would boil down to, is basically the only thing that you would need to actually search and have an internet connection for is that real-time data feed. So that's pretty cool. It's going to be extremely powerful. We think it's a huge thing. It's in demand, and we know there's some latency with, you know, TradingView and you know, people in places like emerging markets. You know, literally just latency in terms of, you know, bandwidth you can actually get your hands on is always an issue. So, you know, downloadable software is actually a great solution for that. And likewise with mobile products, you know, if you have a native mobile product, it's much easier to get kind of a high performance bandwidth, because you're only focused on the connectivity of data feeds rather than the whole web page load, and it takes a ton of time, and it obviously slows down the experience. So we're really excited for the multi-platform. We think that's kind of the best near-term solution. On top of that, we're doing a lot more for watch lists. So we've just rolled out a beta around advanced watch lists, and we will have more to come with that as well. Basically, what we want people to do, or at least what we think people really want to do, and that's like, we're listening to the users, is ultimately, think about more portfolios than positions. And ultimately that comes back to the fact that, to be a good trader or investor, you really got to size what you're doing. You got to ultimately look at things like correlations, how exposed are you in one asset class, how much money are you, kind of locked up in another asset class, how liquid are those markets. So we definitely think that there's some help to be made around portfolios, and that comes back to watch lists. So watch list is really kind of the starting point, but from watch lists you can learn a lot, right? I mean, you probably off the top of your head, how exposed you are in FX versus crypto and all that. But, if I'm a newbie, I don't know, my exposure in, technology stocks versus, oil and gas conglomerates versus, renewables. And then, I'd take a step back and, think about the big picture. Like, I don't care at all about these oil and gas conglomerates, and they're 25%, 40% of my portfolio. Like, let me wind down that. Let me, scale up my positions otherwise. And so we think we can do a lot to help people, and just kind of sizing their overall exposure in financial markets. And ideally, this will give you this kind of dashboard, like you're saying, for your multiple watch lists, where you can then just have that high level overview and say, oh, wow, yeah, I'm way overexposed here, underexposed there. And so we definitely think that that's a great value to the users. And it comes with a lot of tools and features as well. Heat maps is going to be big. We're just launching that. I think it came out last week, but again, these are all kind of soft launches, and we'll have more kind of formal launches coming up. So heat maps is really cool too. Basically, you're familiar with the screener tool, so we think screener tools will actually merge with heat maps. So you could then look at things like, well, you could basically visualize. A heat map is just like a simplification of the visualization of whatever asset you want, but just in a kind of block format versus in kind of a list format. So really, a heat map can be filled with anything. So you could look at a market cap, you can look at it performance. There's all these different ways to visualize essentially what we've already built with the screener tool. And so we think that's a great value as well. So
I will already know how excited people are just listening to I was just getting the mental visuals now. Like, as soon as you started talking about watch list,
it's like, oh, wait a second. Yeah. And then you think about them all together, right? So advanced watch list, and then that filters into the screener tool, and that filters into the heat maps, and that ultimately filters back into the watch list. So everybody can kind of, get on the carousel, if you will, of like portfolio optimizing, and ultimately just becoming, better investor at the end of the day.
Yeah, love that. That's amazing. That really is. Well, Piers, thank you so much for your time and explaining all of those areas and just letting us know the overall vision. The thing that sticks out to me so much is that mentality that TradingView have, ear to the ground, always going above and beyond, powering the community and giving people an opportunity to actually become a better investor, helping them. But you can see the clear care and passion. So I thank you for the work that you do and everybody that TradingView does to make my life easier, make all of our students' lives easier, and the viewers listening. So I would highly recommend, guys, if you haven't already explored it, definitely go and check it out. I'll leave some links in the description, in the bio. If there's any other links that you would like to share with me, Pierce, you think that would be helpful, any blogs, you can let me know after. Be happy to chuck those in as well. But any kind of last words to the viewers?
No, I mean, besides that, I mean, best of luck in the market, and it's tradingview.com, pretty easy. And what other links can I pump in real time? No, I mean, I think that's about it. It's been a pleasure, and I mean, I'm more than happy to keep you guys updated. So next time we can talk about some of the news and announcements, and we can be more candid with some of the big things coming up.
100%.
But yeah, until then, I mean, thanks for having me.
No, you're very welcome. We look forward to having you again. and seeing TradingView evolve and just continue to help. So I appreciate it. So thank you, Pierce, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.